Our scripture today, Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 through 17. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace. And be thankful. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God, the Father, through him.
I don't want you here. That's essentially what we say. Am I on? Can you hear me? Check, check, 1, 2. That's essentially what we say. Let me back up. I have this struggle with invitations. Anybody else have a struggle with invitations? You're having a birthday party. You know you can invite so many people. Oh, but who to invite? Well, we're just going to invite family. All right? So that probably means the people living in your home. Okay. What about Grandma and Grandpa? Well, probably. Otherwise, we'll never hear the end of it. Well, what about Uncle Suzanne and... excuse me. Yeah, right? Who do we invite? What about Aunt Lucy and Uncle Hank? They're always arguing. Do we let them come to our party? Well, they're family. What about our nieces and nephews? What about cousins? First cousins, second cousins, third cousins, once removed. How far does this family umbrella stretch? Who to invite? Well, we're going to invite family and friends. That just makes it more complicated. Right? How do you determine if someone is a friend or an acquaintance? Is a friend someone that you talk to all the time? Is a friend someone you talk to just every Sunday? Is a friend someone you talk to only at work? Is a friend someone you talk to only when you stop by the grocery store? How do you determine who's a friend and who's not? Because we're always afraid, or at least I am, that there's going to be that person who knows that there's a party coming up. Right? And they didn't get the cut. They didn't get the invitation. They feel like we're saying, I don't want you here. And we know that that's an awful feeling. But you can't invite everybody. Right? You only have so much space, so much food, so much time, so many handout gifts. Have you noticed how some parties now, you can't just go to a party or host a party, throw out some cake and balloons and have a good time. It's got to be a gala. Like, you got to have little handout bags for all the little kiddies that come. You got to make sure everybody's happy, well taken care of, and pampered while they're there. It used to be just plug them full of sugar and then send them on their way. And so we've got Thanksgiving coming up, right? We've got this Thanksgiving potluck this afternoon. Everybody say amen. 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 Yeah. You know, pastors, we love food. And so we've got this big dinner coming up and we say, hey, everybody's invited. Everybody. So who do you invite? Or another way to ask this question is, who gets a seat at your table? Who gets gets a seat at your table? Because that means that I value you enough to have you here with me. In this limited space, this limited budget, this limited resource, this limited time, I value you. Who gets a seat at your table? Now, we've been going through the book of Ecclesiastes. Everybody say Ecclesiastes.
Ecclesiastes.
Now wipe the spit off the person in front of you. That was disgusting. Ecclesiastes, and today we're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. So if you want to follow along, that's the only place in Ecclesiastes where we're going to be, is Ecclesiastes 4. And we started this series a couple weeks ago, and we started with looking at the theme of wealth or luxury, abundance, right? This pursuit of pleasure over everything else. And the writer of Ecclesiastes, King Solomon, he looks back on his life at this idea of extravagance and passionate pursuit of satisfaction. He says it's meaningless. Meaningless. A vanity of vanities, a chasing after the wind, he says. Waste of time. And so last week we took a look at the theme of work. Well, what about work? Working hard, getting it done, accomplishing stuff. Solomon would say, man, I built stuff, I worked hard, I got it done, and then you just end up passing it on to somebody else. Meaningless. Vanity of vanities, chasing after the wind, waste of time. But in those things, we've tried to find the victory. Where's the victory in wealth? Where's the victory in work? Because you can't just say that they're pointless, because then nobody would have any money and nobody would work. And so Solomon, he clears that up. He says, look, you can explore pleasure and satisfaction and enjoy life. It was given to you by God to enjoy. Everybody say, by God.
By God.
And you can say that in church. It's okay. Given to you by God to enjoy. And the same goes for work. He says, I found that there's nothing better for men to eat and drink and enjoy the fruit of his labor, to toil, to enjoy his work. Sometimes it just feels good to get stuff done. That also is a gift from God. And so we come to today, and we're not going to look at wealth, we're not going to look at work. Today we're going to look at the world. More specifically, we're going to look at relationships and how we interact with each other, because I think that's probably a pretty important thing. And so we're going to look at what Solomon has to say about this interaction of people with other people. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention what happened on Tuesday. For those of you who don't know, we elected the next president. And some of us in the world, in our nation, had a rough week. And so we've done a lot of grumbling, groaning, and protesting and complaining. Some of us in the world feel like we've had a great week. We've done a lot of gloating, and bragging, and chest puffing. Some of us have had a very numb week. The last 18 months have just been exhausting. So what I'm going to ask, I know this is hard because the election stuff is such an important part of our psyche here in America. I'm going to ask you to just try and scoot it to the back burner just a little bit, if you can, and open up some space so that God can speak. Can we do that? So we're going to be in Ecclesiastes, but I want to start with this quote from Warren Wiersbe. He said, learning and living must be brought together. As I was reading through the commentary for this passage, the commentary written by Warren Wiersbe, he says, learning and living must be brought together. It's one thing to know the right thing to do. It's another thing to do the right thing to do. Would you agree? And so we have to bring those two worlds together, because you can have people who sit up on a hill and they know all the right answers but never do a thing. And you can have people who are doing everything but have no idea why. Bless you. They have no idea why they're doing things. They're just doing. Because it's the latest trend, the latest fad, the latest whatever. And so you need the knowledge, you need the action to come together. So that's what we're going to work at today. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 1. I've given you plenty of time to get there, so here we go. Solomon writes, he says, "Again I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. I declared that the dead who had already died are happier than the living who are still alive. But better than both is he who has not yet been, who has not seen the evil that's done under the sun." Well, that's a very cheery note, right? And it's a commentary by Solomon that could have been written today. I see the oppression. I see the tears of those who are oppressed. I feel their pain, Solomon says. And even as a king, he couldn't just wave his hand and change things radically to help those who are hurting, because there are always those who are hurting. He feels it. Now, one thing you have to remember is that Solomon is writing years and years, hundreds of years before Christ. So keep that in mind. Jesus hasn't shown up yet. And so there is no, "Up from the grave he rose." There's none of that. There's none of the "at Calvary." None of that. There's just oppression, a struggle for power, people die. And that same problem exists today. And so the first interaction that we can have with people is oppression. But oppression degrades people. Oppression degrades people. Oppression essentially says, "I have more value than you. My rights are more important than yours. My place is more important than yours. You aren't quite as good, as valuable, as important as me." That's what oppression says. I mean, we think back to slavery, right? That's the easy one. We think back to slavery and how for years and years and years, we actually didn't even consider people of color to be fully human. You know that? Think back to history class. They actually had to get together and vote to decide whether this person was fully human or just 2/3 of a human. That argument seems preposterous now, but it's in us. We constantly want to outdo each other. We want to be the oppressor, not the oppressee. Oppression degrades people. And ultimately, it doesn't benefit anyone. I mean, think about it. If my whole existence is me trying to prove that I'm better than you, that I have more value than you, and your whole existence is you trying to prove that you're better than me, and you have more value than me, then eventually we're going to destroy each other. And this lesson is perhaps no more evident than what I saw in this clip featuring a baby iguana. If you couldn't tell there at the end, the snakes that had attacked the iguana then turned on each other because they wanted the meal and didn't want to share. That's what happens. Oppression ultimately turns people against each other. That's what happens. See, here's what's at the heart of oppression: a lack of submission. A lack of submission to God. Because think, if I am fully submitted to an all-powerful God, who could eliminate me from ever existing in the blink of a cosmic eye, then who am I to oppress anybody else? If my understanding is that He is and I am not, then I can't reconcile that with, I am better than you and I have more value than you. It doesn't fit together, you see. And so we bully and we belittle and we degrade and we devalue other people. And maybe the root cause of that is a lack of submission to an almighty God. Let's continue. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 4. Everybody still with me? Okay. Solomon says, "And I saw that all labor and all achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbor. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. The fool folds his hands and ruins himself. Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind." It's that comparison trap. Solomon says, look, I see the reason why we work to achieve all that we achieve. We say, oh, I see what they have. I want it too. I see the life they're living. I want it too. And so I'm going to get this degree, or I'm going to get this job, or I'm going to get this bank account, or I'm going to do this so that I can be like them. But comparison is dangerous. In fact, comparison idolizes people. It's like the exact opposite, the radical difference between oppression. Oppression is you have no value to me. You are below me, beneath me. And comparison says, oh, look at them. Just think, if we could be up there, if we could have what they have. You ever done that? Rachel Cruz, author of Love Your Life, Not Theirs, also Dave Ramsey's daughter. She tells a story about her and her husband. They were newlyweds. Her husband, Winston. After they got married, they didn't have much money. And so they took a short little vacation to Charleston, South Carolina. Anybody ever been to Charleston? Yeah. It's nice there. They went, they had a fantastic time in Charleston, enjoyed their trip thoroughly. They got back, and Rachel, she hops online. And she comes across pictures of her friend who had just been to Greece on a yacht. Hashtag loving life. And all of a sudden, that Charleston trip didn't seem so good. And she starts thinking in her head, well, maybe we should go to Greece. Maybe we should go on a cruise, go on a yacht. Maybe we should do this thing and then that thing and all this stuff. And she catches her and says, whoa, 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 whoa. We can't afford to do that. But it's so easy to get caught up in that I want what they have. That's what gets marriages in trouble. Things are difficult. Arguments. No love. No physical interaction. Somebody offers us some friendliness and some physical interaction, and we go, I want some of that. That's what gets us in trouble in business. We have competitors. It even happens in church, if you can believe that. Church down the street. Oh, we had 150 people at service the other day. What are they doing? Well, they brought in a bagpipe player. We need a bagpipe player. Then we can have 150 people. Now that's a funny example, but you know it's true. You see a church and they're building a big building and you go, boy, wish that was us. Yeah. We want what they have. Rachel, in her book, she says this. She says, comparison living will steal your joy. It's true. Comparison living will steal your joy because you're never content. Never happy. If you're always chasing what you don't have, then you'll never have it. That wasn't bad, so I'm going to say it again. If you always chase what you don't have, then you'll never have it. heart of all this is this: a lack of gratitude towards God. Lack of gratitude towards God. I hate my job versus I am so grateful to have a job. Man, my health insurance is so expensive versus I'm so glad I didn't die in the hospital. So glad that my bill isn't $2.7 million. I hate the way that he just ignores me. Versus, I'm so grateful that I'm not alone. See, when we start doing this comparison thing and we say, well, theirs is far better than ours, and we need to do whatever it takes to get up there, no matter what the cost is, we're never going to be happy. That's why you can go to countries that don't make much. Places where the income is below $700 a year. Let that sink in, by the way. $700 a year. You go into this little shanty with tin on the walls and dirt floor. And everything's disgusting. People are barely dressed, and they say, "Here, let me share a meal with you. I'm so glad to have you in my home." Some of the happiest people are those that don't have much by our standards. A lack of gratitude towards God leads to comparison with others. Let me continue. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 7. Solomon says, "Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling?" he asked, "and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Also, if two lie down together, they'll keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken." So Solomon, he goes to the courts. He sees oppression, injustice, sees people treated unfairly and belittled and devalued. He says, I see their tears. Where's the hope? Where's the comfort? He recognizes that sometimes we work and we work and we work just based out of envy and jealousy, and we want what they have, the comparison trap, and he says it's meaningless. Then he sees someone all alone, isolated. And maybe that's you. Because most of the time that's me. I don't necessarily consider myself an oppressor. I don't always consider myself in the comparison thing. But far too often, do I just want to do it on my own? I am. I'm an introvert. I'll confess. I'm a me person, right? I want to do it on my own. Which is probably where my son gets it. I am. Give me something to do, get out of the way, and let me just put my head down and charge forward. That's just, better or worse, that's who I am. But isolation abandons people. Oppression degrades them, comparison idolizes them, and just doing it on your own, isolating yourself, completely abandons them. Say, I don't care what people think. I don't care what problems they've got. I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. And as a Christian, we're called to care about people. And isolation I just want to ignore you and get through life. And according to this man that Solomon's writing about, he says he got to the end of his life and he looked back and there was no one to enjoy it with. He hadn't taken time to enjoy the life that God had blessed him with. He just plowed forward, head down by himself, and then he gets to the end of his life and he's like, what was the point of that? Isolation. By yourself. That's actually the one thing that God said was not good in all of creation. You remember that? Genesis? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. You remember that? Good, because it took me like 50 weeks to go through it the first time. We don't got that kind of time. But he did. He created the heavens and he said it was good. He created the sea and the land and said it was good. He created the animals and the birds and the insects, except for the mosquitoes. And he said they were good. That was a joke. For all you mosquito lovers out there, it's okay. But he makes Adam. He says he's good, but then he realizes that Adam's all by himself. He doesn't have an equal in all of creation. He says it's not good. It's not good for man to be by himself. He'll get into too much trouble. So he does something incredible. He creates a perfect, equal, a counterpart, a dynamic that hasn't been duplicated in all of creation. He creates woman. And he says that is very good. Community is very good. But at the heart of it is this: lack of trust. So, we have a child. His name's Parker. He's 3. And Parker doesn't do so well in fine dining establishments. Or in quiet movie theaters. Or just when mommy and daddy need some alone time. And so, you guys are familiar with this process. It's called finding a babysitter. Quite an endeavor, right? Especially for us, because we don't have family nearby. And so we have to do this kind of vetting process to figure out, okay, are you qualified to watch our son? Is that a machete on your back? No, get out. Right? You have this set of standards. Okay, you can do it, or you can do it. I remember that scene from Mrs. Doubtfire, one of my favorite movies of all time. And they're trying to find, I don't have this in the script, so we're just off. They sit these candidates down trying to find the perfect babysitter, which doesn't exist. In the end, it all comes down to trust. Do you trust this person with what is most valuable to you? And so at the heart of isolation is a lack of trust in God. We don't trust Him to babysit our time, our resources, our life. If I had a mic, I'd drop it. Because this is true. We don't trust people because they might mess it up. Well, I have news. You might mess it up. We can't micromanage everything, and so we've got to involve people. We can't become so afraid of getting burnt that we get cold and alone. Lack of trust in God leads to isolation from others. And then he finishes that statement out with Ecclesiastes 4, verse 12, the end of it there. A verse that you're all probably familiar with. It's mentioned at weddings a lot. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. And you can just picture in your mind, right, a piece of rope. And it has those strands, those twines that are wrapped and mingled together. So if oppression isn't the proper response to people, and if comparison isn't the proper response to people, and if isolation isn't the proper response to people, then what is the proper response to people? Well, the cord of three strands is not easily broken, and if you want to know the proper response, it's the next slide, which is love that unites people. Oh, he ended with love? It's so cheesy. Give me something else. No, that's it. But it's so simple and incredibly difficult. Think about that rope again, a cord of three strands, not easily broken. Imagine if one of the strands didn't like the other. Kind of strange. But imagine. Okay? Now imagine all three, they don't like each other. They're all different colored strands from different manufacturers. Different materials make them up. And yet, they're forced to come together in this rope. And that guy is right here. That's not being wound into a cord. And that guy's right here. And one of them isn't wearing deodorant. Love has this way of binding us together like a cord. It has this way of uniting us. It makes us intimately involved in other people's mess. We got to get up close. And not only that, but we have to trust them enough to let them get this close to us. And we can't just have two strong twines, two strong strings, and a weak one. No, we are all equal in order that we can make something incredibly durable and strong. If you think about it. It's kind of what we were made for. Love has this way of uniting people. At Catalyst this year, conference down in Atlanta, they had a lot of conversation about these types of things, and one speaker that caught my attention dropped a line that I wanted to share with you. So, without further ado, Jenny Yang of World Relief from Catalyst this year. So, I'm going to stop. I'm going to end where I began with this question. Who gets a seat at your table? Some of us are really good. We're really good about going, here, poor person, take what I have. It's not going to bother you. And we never even know their name. But how many of us would give space and place and a seat into our sanctuary that we call home? I don't mean this building. I mean the one you're going to sleep in tonight. How many would let someone that we don't know, because they might mess it up, how many would let someone into our life? This person might be they might be different than me. They might disagree with me. They might have voted differently than me. They might root for a different team. They might speak a different language. They might even worship a different God. But that doesn't mean that we aren't allowed, we aren't created to give them a spot at our table. So, who gets a seat at your table? Who gets a moment of your time? Who gets a place in your heart? Just a reminder. When we were still sinners, God's answer to that question was you. And me. Would you please stand? We're going to sing a song entitled Above All. And we've learned this song the last couple of weeks. I want you to sing it with me in gratitude that God has included you at His table. The words are going to be up on the screen. Sing along.